Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Paradigm Shift, the podcast in which I challenge your thoughts and beliefs over topics such as spirituality, religion, ancient history, conspiracy theories, and everything in between. And in today's episode, we will be talking about the possible existence of parallel universes, otherwise known as the many world interpretation. So let's go ahead and do the intro. Now, on the subject of the parallel universes, it's gonna be a very heavy topic. So what I'm gonna be trying to do is make it as simple as possible, because I'm not really interested in the equations or the quantum ideas behind it, or how scientists have reached these conclusions, and the fact that it's a theory. Sometimes it's still not accepted fully as something concrete among the physicists community. So with that, I will just be explaining a little bit about the few words and a few ideas behind how some scientists came to this conclusion or this theory of the many world, or the fact that we do not live in one universe, but in fact we are part of a multiverse, which I'm sure you've heard of in a lot of mainstream media, such as especially movies recently, at least in the past 10 years, have really delved into this concept of jumping from one timeline to another, from one universe to another, and stuff like that. Now, to start with, I would like to clarify that I think the fact that mainstream media picked up on this is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it is making it easier for people to accept such big ideas among everyone who watches them, so it doesn't become too much of an unheard theory or something no one knows how to explain or even visualize. So it helps us visualize this theory more easily, and brings it into the conversation of everyday life. There's a lot of jokes among a lot of people as well, saying that I don't like the state of the world, and right now I would rather jump ship and go to a different timeline, something like that. However, the other side of this sword is that it also brings with it a scientific or sci-fi part of it. So kind of like people no longer accept these ideas because they do not take them seriously and are completely relegated to fantasy and sci-fi. Now, this is the case with a lot of other theories, especially when it comes to conspiracy theories, how people reject them because they sound like a Hollywood movie. I'm sure you've heard this expression before. And this is what I feel it's doing to this, parallel universes, multiverse, and many world interpretation theory. It's affecting it in that manner. So on one way, we are accepting it more and more, and it's being brought into the conversation more, which will eventually push more people, more scientists, more physicists, to actually do more tests and try to understand whether this is a real thing or not, as real as it can be. And on another hand, it could also make the conversation a little bit more stale because of its existence in mainstream media. So what are the parallel universes? How does it exist on a theoretical level? How did people come up with it? And what did the big heavy ones say about it, such as Einstein and Schrödinger and other scientists along the way? So to understand the beginning, or at the start, like to understand how does it work, or how does a parallel universe gets created, we need to go from the big universe to a very, very small atom. And it is at the atom level that we can start talking about quantum mechanics and quantum physics as opposed to classic physics. Now, classic physics has a certain idea when it comes to how a single atom functions, and it bases all theories coming after it based on this constant existing theory about a particle or an atom, is that it exists in one single space. So to explain that not in too many scientific words, imagine there's a big ball, a basketball, and I pick it up and I throw it in the air. Now, if I throw it and at some point I stop it in mid-trajectory, I can detect where the ball will land based on its speed and its current state in space. Of course, there is the equation that will tell me where it will land. Now, this concept is what is known as the classic physics, because they used to believe that it is applied on an atomic level. And when quantum mechanics emerged, it has brought forth the idea that no, on a very small level, the item that I'm looking at, like let's say for example, the atom doesn't have a trajectory. It actually has something that they refer to as a wave function. And this wave function means that let's say the ball itself in its current state in mid-air it actually has a lot of probability of where it will land. So it doesn't rely on past information in order to give me future information. This is the simple way of looking at it. Just because I threw the ball in a specific line and speed, quantum mechanics tells me that that ball does not necessarily mean it will land in a specific way. And that comes because down to the nature of the atom and its wave function. Now, not to get into too much details, because there's so many different articles about this, so many different books, YouTube videos, podcasts, a lot that explain it in a very scientific method, and that is not my basically reason to do this. That's not what I'm looking for here. That's not the goal. The goal for me is just to bring forth this theory, and you can do with it whatever you like in terms of understanding it more, applying it to your life and stuff like that. So when we want to talk about the existence of a specific particle in space on a quantum level, we call it superposition. The superposition means that the particle exists in multiple states when not observed. So what does that mean? That means that at any point, this particle can behave in a lot different ways, and we don't know how it will behave. It is only when we observe it, and by observing it means there is a debate among in the scientific community about what observing means, whether is it a conscious being looking at it or just measuring it in a specific state using different cameras or whatever, or devices and stuff like that. So this till now they still haven't yet agreed on what it is, and this is the most the experiment that most represents this is called the double slit experiment, which I invite you all to research about. There's a lot of nice YouTube videos that have a lot of illustrations and explain how it works. I'm not going to talk about it now because it needs a lot of visual backup and it's not easy for a podcast to do that. However, what I will say is that after the double slit experiment was conducted, it was believed that the particle changes its behavior once we observe it. That basically destroyed everything we knew before that time about particles and how classic physics look at things. Because instead of having one general absolute equation, we have now a different equation telling us that the particle behaves differently once a conscious being, let's call it that, is looking at it. So that explains what superposition means. Okay, now when that happened, Einstein was really against it, and he said a line which is very, very famous. He said, God does not play dice in the universe or with the universe. What does that mean? It means that he doesn't believe that anything in the universe has a probability. Everything is determined based on previous information that we have fed it to this experiment. So he believed that once we know where we came from, basically, we'll know where we're headed. And the double slit experiment and everything when it comes to superposition challenges that hugely, because it actually tells us that even though we have information from before, we still don't know the outcome. There's an infinite probability of where this particle will end up being. This was also highlighted by the very famous physicist Schrödinger in the Schrödinger cat experiment, and this has now become more of a joke when it comes to, again, quantum mechanics and the state of something, how it is basically when observed and not observed. Again, to talk about the experiment that Schrödinger did, he theorized that if he has a box, and inside the box he puts a cat. Next to the cat, he will put a flask of poison, and this poison is triggered, something will break it, whether an atom that he also placed inside this box decays or does not decay. So basically, he put three things, in theory, he put three things in a box: a cat, a poison flask, and an atom. Now, and he closed the box. He said that the experiment goes to say that if the atom decays, it will trigger the machine to break the flask, releasing the poison and killing the cat. If the atom does not decay, it will not trigger the machine, which means the flask will remain intact, and it will mean that the cat will still be alive. Very simple, right? So what he says is that as long as the box is closed and we don't know the state that the atom is in, given that the atom is in superposition, which means given that the atom could be decaying or not decaying, we don't know because we haven't observed it yet, the cat is both alive and dead throughout. This is the state that the cat is in. As opposed to the atom and its superposition, the cat is alive and the cat is dead. That again doesn't work with classic physics, because physics tell you need one outcome to any experiment. You cannot have both outcomes at the same time. And Schrödinger's resolution to this was the fact that the moment it could be, like the moment we open the box, that's when we can find out whether the cat is alive or dead, which also means that once we have opened the box, we have determined that the wavelength of the wave function of the atom has indeed collapsed, which means that the atom has reacted in a specific way, and we'll be able to find out in what way it reacted. Now, Schrödinger said that the cat cannot be both alive or dead. So it's like either or. It cannot be it cannot be at the same time alive and dead. And that's where the theory of entanglement comes. So we've discussed superposition, but entanglement is something else completely, and I will explain how those two can interact together, and how once they both interact together, that's when we come up with the many-word interpretation or the parallel universes. So entanglement means two particles have interacted with each other. Once those two particles interact with each other, they actually create something like what is known as their wave function collapses into one. So if it was an individual wave function for each of the two atoms, okay, One has a probability of going upwards, going left, right, up or down. The other has the same probability, going up, down, left or right. So each one has individual wave function. Once those wave functions collide together, once we hit them together, they both fall into one wave function. They become one. Now, if I want to explain it on a bigger scale and talk about two tennis balls. So let's say I'm holding a tennis ball and and someone on the opposite side of, let's say, a table is holding another tennis ball. Same height, same width, everything related. They are the same, basically, tennis balls. And let's say I pick it up and I throw it in a specific speed, very controlled speed. So I know how I'm throwing it, at what trajectory and what speed. On the other side, that person is also throwing that tennis ball in the same speed and the same trajectory. Once they hit each other, Newton's third law tells you that they will bounce off of each other in the same way. So if they are both hitting each other at a specific speed, they will both go backwards at the specific speed. This is a simplified version of entanglement. Basically, the two balls have become entangled in their speed and force and trajectory, and they would react the same way. Now, where does this apply when it comes to superposition and to Schrödinger's cat and to the creation of the parallel universes? Someone came much later, after Schrödinger and after Einstein, and suggested this idea that we have been looking at particles and at quantum elements as if they were separate from us, the observer. We are also made of particles and atoms, and we should also be considering ourselves the observer of this experiment as quantum beings, basically. And given the theory of entanglement, just when the moment I actually observe the atom and how it has reacted, the fact that I'm made of atom as well reacts in the same way to that atom. Okay? So in that manner, when I open the box of Schrödinger and I look at the cat, I reacted in two different ways. One was seeing the cat alive, another was seeing the cat dead. Because both situations of the cat's state, whether it's alive or dead, do exist when it comes to superposition. So me as an observant, I also react to the way I've seen the outcome of the experiment in the same way as part of the entanglement, which means that we have interacted with the wave function collapse of the atom inside the box, and whatever is inside of us has also became one with that wave function. So when that happens, I go into, basically, there's a split in reality or in the universe. One version of me has seen the cat alive, the other version of me has seen the cat dead. Now, that is a really big idea when it comes to what does that mean, that there are other versions of me that exist out there? Does that mean that we are part of a multiverse? How does that work? Well, I mean, on a theoretical level, okay, it's very simple when this theory is applied. Basically, look at it as this way. Every situation exists at some point. The entire situation, like all the different ones, look at them as some sort of parallel rivers. Okay, so you have 5 rivers flowing in the same direction, and they're all parallel to each other. They never meet, but they all are doing the same thing. They're moving in the same way. And you as a person, you look at or you can be standing in one river, only one river at a time. And at some point, you make a decision. Something happens which in physics called entanglement. But if we want to take it on ourselves on a more, emotional, human level, let's say a choice, for example. So I made a choice to do something. Now, when I make the choice to do something, I, on a very, like a metaphysical level, I am now standing at the top of these 5 different rivers, and I'm choosing to go in the one in which that choice that I make took place. So again, in easy terms or in everyday life experiences, let's say, for example, I'm in a restaurant, I want to eat, and I look at the menu and I see there's chicken, there is a salad, there is meat, stuff like that. There's soup. So I make the choice. Okay, so I'm gonna look at the chicken. I'm gonna order the chicken for my lunch today. Now, what that means is that all the possible outcomes of me eating all these foods does exist. It's just that my mind and my consciousness has converted or converged, to be more specific, converged to the timeline in which I chose the chicken, to eat the chicken. So you see how the fact that I chose something doesn't mean that the other choices have stopped existing, because they are always existing in every aspect of reality. What I simply have done is that I have focused my consciousness into looking or observing one of these lines or one of these rivers in which I have done specific something. Now, a lot of scientists today tell us that there's Sean Carroll, who is today maybe the most knowledgeable scientist and theoretical physicist about the topic, and he wrote a book which I haven't read yet, but I believe it's going to be very difficult for me to read, called Something Deeply Hidden, in which he talks about the many-word theory, in which he talks about how scientists and the scientific community needs to start taking quantum mechanics more seriously and need to have better equipments and better experiments when it comes to these topics. Now, he believes that these words that are created all the time by the entanglement that we have created, and not just by us as observers, but also by the whole world around us, everything that is in this universe. So when you have different particles connecting and entangling with each other, all of these are branching out into different realities and different worlds. The only thing that is making our world seem like one is because we are observing this one only. But that does not stop the other ones from existing, because on a subatomic level, on a quantum level, it has been proven that the wave function of a particle does not collapse until it is being observed. So it is, if I want to answer it on a philosophical level, basically, it's our existence as observers. That's what's creating the reality that we are in. We are not in a reality and taking part of it. Our existence is creating that reality, and it's creating one of many realities that already exist. There is either a very large number or an infinite number of realities that have branched out from every interaction that happens all the time. And this also works on like the idea that that new words are being created all the time, which means that we have more words in the future than we had in the past, because there were less interactions in the past than there are right now, and there will be in the future. So this is an exponential growth of realities and of universes that are being created all the time. And again, if I want to go back to the philosophical aspect of it, that does mean that it's kind of funny, the mix between I think therefore I am and this quantum mechanic theory, because one is actually explaining it from a philosophical place, the other is trying to explain it from a scientific place. And This is something just to sidetrack a little bit. I have always noticed this, that when it comes to science and what science's nature is, what does it do to explain things, science basically never explains why things happen. Science explains how they do. So science goes very small or very big, micro or macro, and explain to us that, for example, when photosynthesis happen, you have the plant which is in direct contact with the sun, so particles come in and they affect on this level, and then this happens and that happens. At first you're thinking that this is why things happen. Why is it that when I put a plant outside, for example, it actually grows? This is not why. This is the how it grows. This is the function of it. It's explaining to you on a small, subatomic level, how things interact with each other. But there is no answer as to why is it that they do. This is where quantum mechanics is coming in right now. They're telling you that it's all a probability, basically, that the particle doesn't have a reason for it to act the way it does. It's simply a probability of a lot of different actions, and one of those actions is the universe that we live in right now. And now, to kind of not to go too deep into this, and the purpose of me talking about this is not just to inform people or to inform you about, the mechanics of this theory, or why does it exist, or the possibility of it existing. It's more about what can be done with it. Okay, what can this information help us do, or why should we know about something like this? People like Sean Carroll, they don't believe that there's a reason for it to be known. He believes that, and he was asked several times, and other theoretical physicists have been asked as well, as to, okay, so let's say it has been proven with experiments, with devices, that not only a particle has a wave function, not only that the wave function collapses only when we observe it. Let's say all of that is approved, but on top of that, let's say that we do have a way to understand or to measure that there are different universes, and we have created parallel universes all the time, and there is a version of me which has ordered that soup instead of that chicken. Does that mean that person is separate from me? Does that mean it's the same person as me? What does it mean? And scientists usually don't like to, get meaning behind all this. They just want to know. But to me, I feel like there is a big implication as to what we can do with something like this, because it actually does fit when it comes to spirituality and the possible existence of higher beings, or higher dimensional beings, beings that are able to understand or to alter certain things every now and then, or at will, if you want. And maybe we can finally understand the function, or how does it work exactly when we talk about miracles, placebo effects, things that have no possible explanation in the physical world. We have all experienced things that science can never explain. We have seen things, we have felt the existence of beings, we have done so many things on a spiritual level that science still tries to explain. Or actually doesn't even bother explaining, because there is no physical evidence in this three-dimensional world. So what I believe is that this is the first step on a long path to us understanding, and if you want, quantifying the existence of multiple universes. And could it be as simple as a miracle, meaning that you have simply jumped from one universe to another, in which that universe you don't have to worry about something that you are worrying about right now. Like for example, if I want to say let's say I was not able to walk before and something happened with me on a spiritual or religious level and now I'm healed, does that mean that I simply shifted my consciousness from the world in which I am paralyzed to a world which I'm not? And if that is the case, is this something that at some point in the future are we able to work with? Are we able to control through, means and equations and devices that we haven't even thought about yet? But does that mean that we can bring it on into our three-dimensional world and on our level, our plane of existence, to be able to control something like this? And the more conspiracy theory question of all this is this something that has happened before? This is, to me, is very important, because there's a lot of theories and a lot of ideas out there that suggest that we have in fact changed something in our words that has not been shared, with us as the public before. And this is where concepts such as time travel, such as the Mandela effect come into play. And the Mandela effect, in case you don't know, is basically I will go into that in a separate episode, because it demands a lot of explanation and going through. However, the Mandela effect is a group of people, or a large group of people, remembering something that doesn't exist anymore. This is basically how to simplify it. Like, a lot of people remember it in a specific way, but now it's in a separate way. And there were a lot of theories till now that discussing why such things exist. So when it comes to something like the Mandela effect, when it comes to something like time travel, when it comes to something to all these unexplained phenomena that happen around the world, are we dealing with something that perhaps at some point something has shifted us from one world to another, and are we not aware of what happened? Or is this something that happens all the time, and it's simply are we becoming more aware of it on a conscious level, which in other terms mean that the more we study it, the more we evolve and grow up, it will become more and more simple. I mean, this is a theory that has only been around for the past, 50, 60, 70 years only. And if you compare that to our entire existence as civilization, or even the universe, it is a tiny, tiny fraction. So I believe that when it comes to quantum physics, and when it comes to theories such as parallel universes and many world theory and stuff like that, there is an endless possibility to what we can learn, what we can do. And if only mainstream media stops taking this idea and making it a blockbuster movie, I think it would be taken much more seriously than it is now. And that's basically where I'm gonna end it. Are we gonna be able to control something like this in the future? Are we gonna has it been done before? Is this something concrete? I mean, I don't know. This is the point of this episode and this podcast in general, is to raise these questions and in the endless pursuit of knowledge. So I invite you to do the same as well. I have much more to learn about this topic, and I would love to have conversations with people discussing these and different ideas and different interpretations, and where they will take this. So this is where I'm gonna end it today. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast, for all the support that I've been getting. If you are on my YouTube channel, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment below. I would love to hear from you. I would interact with you. And so I'll see you in the next episode, and thank you for listening.